Susan here?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to St. Paul's on this, our feast of the conversion of St. Paul's, of St. Paul. And it's a day for us to uphold an annual tradition, not only honoring our patron, but also remembering the work of our own St. Paul's Foundation and their mission to support the fabric of all of our historic buildings and campus and to highlight their work. And this is also the annual La Trobe Lecture. Barbara's lecture today is called The Marks of a Masterpiece, and when she said that, that's perfect for La Trobe Lecture because we worship every Sunday in that La Trobe masterpiece. And so I look forward to hearing what Barbara has to say. But before we do that, I'm going to call on the treasurer of the St. Paul's Foundation to tell us about the work of the foundation. Welcome Dawn Stump, please, and thank her for her work.
Good morning. I'm Dawn Stump. I'm the treasurer of St. Paul's Foundation. I'm just standing in today for Joe Thomas, who's our president. He couldn't be here. On behalf of the foundation, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for attending the La Trobe Lecture today. I'd also like to thank the members of the Board of Trustees who meet quarterly to discuss, monitor, and direct the activities of the foundation. So I've mentioned Joe Thomas as our president, Tim Belovitz as our secretary, and the other trustees that help oversee the foundation are John Kepler, Sarah Knudsen, Catherine Murphy, August Pecunis, and Andrew Rutter, who I saw here today. And if I missed any of you, I apologize. I would also like to say the greatest debt of gratitude probably belongs and is owed to Mariah Holleran, who manages the day-to-day function of the foundation and also keeps the trustees organized, which is no small feat given all the competing priorities we all have. By way of background, if you're not familiar, the foundation was created by the vestry in 1992 in order to financially support the maintenance and the restoration projects for the buildings and the grounds. The thinking or the hope was that if we dedicated resources, the funding of ongoing maintenance could occur and free up other funds in the operating budget for the ministries of St. Paul's. And I'm proud to say that's exactly what has happened. The foundation started with just $6,500, and today we have over $8 million. So thanks to all of you who have helped make that possible. This includes a main endowment that is valued at over $5.8 million. And we're very fortunate to have had a bequest from the Simmons family. So we have a separate fund. Oh, there's Catherine. Hi, Catherine. The Simmons Fund, which is valued at just over $3.2 million. So each year, the foundation directs 4.5% of our average portfolio value to ongoing maintenance with the work at St. Paul's. In addition, with the addition of the Simmons Fund at the beginning of 2022, we've been able to also support programs such as the Lazarus Ministry, the music program, scholarships at the preschool, and the Cemetery Fund, which is very exciting because we have some work to do there. So, Foundation Sunday, as you are probably aware, is just a day we recognize the work of the foundation and also remember those who came before us, because without their vision, we certainly wouldn't be in the situation we are today. We're very, very fortunate. I also especially want to remember those members of the Covenant Circle. If you're not familiar, the Covenant Circle is comprised of those who have remembered St. Paul's in their estate planning. We have a very recent example of this. We have had a wonderful blessing that came earlier this year when the foundation received a contribution from longtime parishioner Joan Mount's estate. Joan passed away in 2020, and a portion of her estate was given to St. Paul's Foundation. So we're very grateful, and we encourage any of those who might want to remember St. Paul's in your estate planning to look on our website. It's under the Foundation tab. So thank you for being here and enjoy the program.
I don't want to waste a second. Dr. Barbara Drake Bain does not need an introduction at St. Paul. She's backed by popular demand with great affection and great admiration. You are one of us, an honorary member of this parish. We're delighted to have you. Welcome, Dr. Bain.
Good morning. It's so nice to see so many faces and so many friends that I've known now for several years, and it's all a blessing that started in the Holy Land. So that's a very special thing. So when Oren asked me if I would do this, I thought I'd really like to talk a little bit about what makes a masterpiece. How do we know what a masterpiece is? And I was slightly worried that he would say, I don't think that really fits with La Trobe and this whole lecture series. But to my delight, he said, well, we worship in a masterpiece every week. And I thought, yeah, you really do, right? And then it was particularly resonant for me because upon reflection, I realized that La Trobe had a direct influence on me long ago, not here and not at the Capitol. At about age 8, I visited with my parents the Adena estate of Thomas Worthington, who was the 6th governor of the state of Ohio. I'm a Buckeye. And that, as such a young girl, that building, and I don't really even know why, made a big impact on me. And I haven't been back since, but every time I'm out visiting my sister, I think, I just may like to drive down to Adena. And I promise you I'm going to do it, because that building too, which is another great La Trobe building, really resonated with me as a little girl. And then 2 years later, this was the second work of art that astounded me. It's very predictable. It's universally recognized as a masterpiece. This is from the installation in the 1964 World's Fair in New York, right? And I don't know if any of you remember, but do you remember that you went on a little like a moving sidewalk that took you back, and you didn't, no, I can't, want to stop, I want to, and you're moving along, but that, just took my breath away. And that's true of everybody, right? So what is it that lends a work of art like that such effective power, like it can make you cry, right? But this is the power of art, and the power of art also can lead to terrible results, right? That you don't want, but it's all a function of the same thing, that the works of art can really have a huge impact on our souls. And just several years after I had seen it, and I remember when that attack happened, and I remember, crying as a little girl at that news. These things don't stop. You have horrors like this, right? Why do you possibly think that this would help people have a positive attitude about the need for ecological awareness? Pumpkin soup on the Mona Lisa? It's manifestly obscene. And then, how we all felt, right, on the day that the fire happened at Notre Dame. And we all talked about Notre Dame last week. Last year when I was here. So this question of what is a masterpiece and how do we know? I'm not the only person who's ever thought about that. And in fact, the Wall Street Journal, since 2005, has had a series of essays about individual masterpieces. Is any of you familiar with that series? Right. That's great. I'm glad to know that. And among the things that have been included over the years is the great Michelangelo staircase at the Laurentian Library in Florence. So this was something that somebody wrote about. Well, the idea that is a masterpiece isn't a new one. Vasari referred to that sort of the commodious staircase, which is to me hardly sufficient to describe it, but and said the whole is so unlike the common treatment that everyone stands amazed at the sight thereof. And I don't know if you've stood in this place, right? It's as if there's a great lava flow coming down towards you that draws you, in the direction of the library. That was one of the many pieces that have been included in this series in the Wall Street Journal. And it's actually included as a masterpiece in my Art 100 lecture, I remember 1,000 years ago. So, in fact, the art editor at the Wall Street Journal, after I wrote an essay about Notre Dame a year or so ago about why they shouldn't change the stained glass, the 19th century stained glass, he said to me, I think you'd be a great person to write for our masterpiece series. Oh, that sounds great. He said, but you're going to have to submit a number of recommendations to me, because since we've been doing this since 2005, you might suggest something that's already been done. So you're going to have to give me half a dozen or so suggestions. And he said, no piece from the Met. No piece from the... Okay. Okay. So he said, it's going to look too promotional. Even though you're retired, it's going to look too promotional. And moreover, he said, I will be inundated with emails from curators all around the country wanting to write about things in their collection. So you cannot write about anything. Okay. And he sent me a thing about how they define it. It has to be a work of surpassing cultural significance. Okay, surpassing culture. So I then sent a list. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to look through some of the things that I sent. For complicated reasons, I've actually sent him two lists. The first thing that he chose was a piece that is actually not currently on exhibition. So that was the other thing. It has to be something that's currently on show, because otherwise the readers write in and say, well, you wrote about that piece, and then I went to France to see it, and it wasn't on show. So, okay, had to be on show. So he's gotten a number of recommendations. The first one is going to have to wait, and the second one has been chosen and submitted, but hasn't appeared yet. So what we're going to do today is go through some of them, and we're going to kind of play, and you're going to help me, and we'll see, which ones you like, and so. So I thought we would start close to home. I saw this when I visited Annapolis for the first time, and we went down to the lower level, and I'm walking around, and there's this kind of shrine to John Paul Jones downstairs, and suddenly I saw this Houdon bust, which kind of took my breath away. I thought he was so handsome, and I was really kind of smitten with this. Houdon's work is wonderful, and maybe some of you remember when it was, a lot of it was shown at the National Gallery years ago, but this one of John Paul Jones really struck me. And when I proposed it to the Wall Street Journal, I referred to it, in little snippets for the editor. I said, oh, it's a sensitively rendered image of the oft-forgotten American naval hero, exhibited and mostly overlooked in the crypt of the chapel at Annapolis. Are you any of you familiar with this one? Yeah, lots. Okay. And does it strike you when you see it? Yeah? So let's look at, we're going to look at a quick video that's going to talk about it. And note what he says he's going to do at the beginning.
Hello, my name is Dr. Dennis Conrad. I'm a historian here at the Naval History and Heritage Command, and I am one of the editors of the Naval Documents of the American Revolution series. And today I'm going to talk about the bust of John Paul Jones, one of the earliest heroes of the American Navy. In 1779, September, there was a small force of American ships led by the Bonhomme Richard, and it encountered a convoy of British ships coming from the Baltic Sea, and that was escorted by the HMS Serapis. The two ships faced off in a long, obstinate, and bloody battle. After the victory, the Americans were forced to abandon the Bonhoeffer Char because it sank because of the damage sustained during that battle. John Paul Jones announced the victory and became a celebrity and a hero throughout Europe, and in particular in France. To celebrate, the Masonic Lodge of Nine Sisters in Paris commissioned a bust of John Paul Jones by Jean-Antoine Houdon. If you were to look at the rear, you would see that Jones's hair is in a queue. That's the style that was affected by sailors of the time. Jones may indeed have worn his hair in this queue, but it also is symbolic of the fact that he was a sailor, a man of the sea. And I think he is emphasizing that point, or the symbolism of that point, in this bust. John Paul Jones is truly the first great hero of the United States Navy. And his words, I mean, if you were to go to the United States Naval Academy, there is a letter purported to be written by Jones which describes the qualities of a good officer. Jones represented the kinds of qualities that we'd like to see or we want to see in our sailors of today and of the past. And he personifies brave, intrepid, and willingness to dare and to dare mightily to take on odds, and we hope that our Navy today will do the same kind of thing.
What did he tell you about the sculpture? What did he tell you one thing? He told you what his hairstyle was, right? And it's not his job. He's not an art historian. He's a historian. He's talking about who he is in history. But he says at the beginning, I'm going to talk about the bust, but he doesn't, right? So what is it? Whoop. Okay. So what is it about this sculpture that makes it powerful? It's, yeah, the eyes. What else? The stance. Meaning? Yeah, it's sort of he has this amazing presence, right? And the marble, look at the carving of the marble to give it that is something. I love these cheekbones, right? Right, and then there's the sort of smooth lines of his face, and then the bits and pieces of his uniform, right? But the smooth lines of his face, and then at the sides, oh my goodness, a gentle way that his hair curls back from there. It's phenomenal, right? It's just so beautiful. And he really liked it too, because he had plaster casts made. I can't remember, it was 18, something like 18, which he gave to all his friends, right, so that they could, and in fact, the first image that I showed you was one of the plaster casts that's in Edinburgh. Many museums have the plaster cast. Annapolis has one. So that was my first candidate for the Masterpiece series. Okay. I know that the editor of the Wall Street Journal particularly likes sculpture, so I started with some stone sculpture, and I gave him this one because I was pretty sure nobody would have written about it. It's in Malbork Castle in Poland, which is not far from Dansk. It takes all day to get there if you're driving from Warsaw. It's this exquisitely tender carving in it's called the beautiful style. It was called the beautiful style around the time it was made, around 1400, and it came to New York for our Prague exhibition, which I did in 2005, and the subject, I've told you, it's very recognizable to this audience. It's Jesus on the Mount of Olives, right? And it's carved of this particular limestone from the Prague region, which is known as Marley limestone, which is softer when you first carve it, so that the qualities that the sculptor can bring out in it are very special. But his head is kind of caught on the, let's see if there. How about that, right? So, does that strike you in any way? That kind of, does it say anything to you? The way that mouth is open, he's looking off. It's not a blank stare, right? There's this, you see sadness. You might see a kind of, like he's talking to, what's he looking at, right? He's looking off. What is he looking at? And I just, the quality of the stone struck me in particular. And then the way that very detailed face, and then these great swooping lines, right, of his garment, which kind of enfold him. And this one, I don't know if you can see. Do I have one more? Yeah. The bottoms of his feet, right? And there are wrinkles in the bottoms of his feet. If you think about when your foot is turned back that way, right? So there's this very vulnerable part of his foot, the underside of his foot, and that is brought out by the sculptor. That's not an accident, right? This is this moment of great vulnerability in the Passion of Jesus, right? So this is one of the ones I had proposed. Is anybody seeing this piece? I mean, is this responding to you? Has anybody been to Marlborough Castle? No. You should, actually. It's pretty amazing. But do you see how this has a kind of allure, and has a kind of wonderful accomplishment of that sculpture that you might expect if you're going to see that when you're looking at Florentine sculpture, right? You might not expect it in the castle of the Teutonic Knights in the north of Poland, right? But you should, because they were actually great patrons of the art. Okay, then the next one I proposed. If you don't know this already, this is an assignment in May. So does anybody recognize this piece right away? It's okay if the answer is no, but it should be. Everybody in the room should say yes, right? This iconic, tender sculpture in gilded silver. It is not cast. It's all worked, hand-worked. It was a gift of the Queen Jeanne d'Evreux to the Abbey of Saint-Denis, the Royal Abbey of Saint-Denis, between 1324 and 1339. So she became queen in 1324. She was only reigning queen for 4 years, and then she was the widowed dowager queen and a great patron of the arts. It was originally paired with an image of St. John, because her name was Jeanne, so St. John was her patron saint, which she gave both of those to the Abbey of Saint-Denis. Can you imagine, in the 1500s, in 1590, the monks melted down the image of St. John because they received a threatening letter from their butcher during Lent who said, if you don't pay your bill, you're not getting any meat for Easter. So they melted it down. Can you imagine? That, we think that the destruction of works of art are what savage people in other cultures do. It can happen anywhere. It is, in fact, a reliquary that can you see she's holding a fleur-de-lis? And anybody who's going to France in May who comes back saying fleur-de-lis instead of fleur-de-lis will get a 0 on the quiz. She's absolutely exquisite. And we're not used to seeing gold and silver sculptures. Why is that? For the exact same reason that the problem of the monks and their butcher bill. So you can see there. Here she's got the fleur-de-lis, and that had tiny relics of the Virgin Mary in it. Her hair, the milk of the Virgin, and a piece of her clothing. She also had a crown, which got lost along the way, I think in the French Revolution, if I remember correctly. This has the inscription on the front of it that gives the date of 1339, so we know that it was completed by that. And the base has enamels, scenes of the life of the Virgin, you see there, and then these adorable little lion feet, right? And then that's a detail of one. I mean, look at that. Can you think of the Nativity any other way? The Adoration of the Shepherds any other way in future? You cannot leave out that mischievous goat. He appears from time to time. Another one I recommended, and maybe some of you will remember this from the Notre Dame lecture last year. It lives nearby to you. Well, theoretically, traffic here is a nightmare, but. It's known as the Rubens vase. It was created, it was carved in around the year 400, and then preserved throughout the Middle Ages, prized and recognized as being such a magnificent, magnificent work of art. So it belonged to Louis of Anjou, who was the brother of the French King Charles V before 1368. Then we next see it in the possession of Charles VI, son of Charles V. He gave it to his wife, Isabel of Bavaria, who then gave it to Notre Dame in 1425. And in 1593, the chapter of Notre Dame let it go. And it was sold, oh my goodness, at an upscale art fair at Saint-Germain-des-Prés, right across the river, in the early 1600s. It was like the Maastricht Art Fair, but in Paris at the time, and Peter Paul Rubens goes there and buys it. It bears still now a gold rim that was created in Paris between 1809 and 1819. So there's a couple of little chapters that are missing there. It was described in 1545 as hanging in an armoire, right? They must have strung it up by those handles. And at one point it had relics in it. It was a sort of a upscale bucket, so you can put different things in it. It had an enamel base at one point that had birds and serpents on it, but you see how it has this amazing translucence to it? It's just an exquisite object. And there's one of the handles with these kind of crazy pan-like figures. And that's the drawing that Rubens himself made of it. The drawing is preserved in St. Petersburg today. It had a base on it at the time that Rubens owned it, but not the original one that had the flowers. So that was one of the proposals. And then, again, in my various proposals, I was playing with the notion of what constitutes sculpture. It's not just marble things. It's not just what you would expect. It should include things like that vase. It should include sculpture in gold. It should include hard stone carvings, right? So, for those of us, for the women in the audience, we all went through our cameo phase. Usually sometime in junior high school. Some of us are still in it. And there are both cameos, right, which have the image is raised from the surface, and intaglio when the image is carved in. And this is an intaglio of Julia Flavia, the daughter of the Emperor Titus, in sapphire. Carved sapphire. And it was at one point installed at the top of that great thing on the left, which did not survive the French Revolution, crowning that, which was a sort of elaborate altarpiece / reliquary. That's where it was. And when the revolution happened and they thought, we can use all of that silver and gold, let's nonetheless keep this sapphire carving from the very top. And she is wearing the diadem of a goddess. This kind of watery sapphire gives it a kind of softening effect of her. She's not a great beauty, and you'll see that in a minute. See? She looks much better in sapphire, as is generally the case with all of us. And she has these kind of very robust features that are softened when they're carved in sapphire. The carver was Greek and very proud of his own work. He actually signed this piece. And his signature goes along the nape of her neck. There's some Greek lettering there. Iodos was the man who was very proud of having carved it. That head that you see on the right is in the Getty. The previous one I showed you, which was kind of not very nice of me, there's a weaker terracotta that's in the Louvre. Okay. Then there's this. This is called the Goldenes Rüssel, the golden horse. It is made of gold, not gold and silver, gold, gems, what's called rhombus enamel, that all over enamel you see the horse is entirely white, and that you'll see the costumes of the various figures. That's all done in enamel on gold. And this was created in Paris before 1405. It was a New Year's present from Charles VI, the king, to his wife Isabella of Bavaria. New Year's, 1405. She pawned it somewhere between April and July of the same year, with a second similar object and a brooch to her brother, who was known as Louis le Barbu, bearded Louis. And then by 1441, it went to Ingolstadt in Germany, where it was in the church at Ingolstadt. And by 1509, it ended up in this monastery in Altötting in Bavaria. 1509. In 1801, it was sent to the mint in Munich. They were going to melt it down, but somehow somebody rescued it. And by 1821, it's back in Altötting, where it is today. This is worth a pilgrimage, by the way. Oh my gosh. When you see the baby in that kind of translucent red, and the Virgin in that beautiful white with that great brooch of pearl and sapphire, and then the infant Saint John the Evangelist and the infant Saint John the Baptist at their feet, so recognizable by the cup on the one hand and the lamb on the left-hand side, then the King of France in the fleur-de-lis gown on the left, and one of the courtiers on the other side. I mean, just unbelievable. Okay. And there's the horsey, oh my goodness. And so waiting down below, like this Paul Revere's ride about to happen, is the golden horse. And do you see the workmanship on that saddle? That's all, it's called pointillé. It's done with an engraver's tool, right on the gold. And you see that the horse's mouth is open. You can even see the horse's teeth. I did write down the dimensions sometimes, but I'm terrible at that, and so I apologize. And look at this, the little figures with the curls on the woman's hair, right? And the infant Jesus, who's got his, he's eager to get out of mom's grasp. Okay, anybody seen this before? Aha! Oh, when did you see that?
In a magazine.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I mean, that's good. And nobody can see it. That's why I asked. Oops, I just gave it away. It's not on show right now. So there you go. If you're paying attention to what I was saying earlier, you're on to what, that this was one of the ones that was chosen. This is the ship of Saint Ursula. So it started out as an oversized salt cellar on a princely table. It's made out of cornelian, right, with gilded silver, and then that was in 1501. And then it was a gift to Queen Anne of Brittany when she arrived in Tours in 1501. The queen is coming to town. We've got to give her something. They gave her that, and then she passed it on to her daughter, and then hence to King Henry III. And he gave it to Reims Cathedral in 1574, having converted it into a reliquary of the story of St. Ursula, which is a feast that's probably not celebrated at St. Paul's, but it could. It could be, and I think you might think about that. It has the mark of the Paris goldsmith, it's both Paris goldsmith and a Tours goldsmith, and then that's the inscription going across the front from the king and saying that it's in honor of Ursula. And Ursula and her companions, she had 11,000 companions, all of whom were intent on a pilgrimage to Rome, all of whom were martyred when they had set off on ship to eventually get to Rome, and that trip did not go well. And so, but they became, when those relics were discovered, right, according to the legend, Ursula became one of the most widely venerated saints. And probably some of you know people or may be aware of Ursuline schools, right, which are Catholic girls' schools, because these were sort of heroic women saints. And again, you're going to see that this is the same kind of enameling that we saw before, what we just saw in the Altötting reliquary. That is Ursula herself on the prow of the ship. So there's her assembled company, all added to the ship with all this appropriate rigging. John Paul Jones would have loved this ship, right? And Ursula there. That was one. Finally, how are we doing for time? Oops, one more. Oh, what happened? Darius, what did I do? Go. There you go. Okay. I don't know why. Next. That's the last one. Okay, we have had a malfunction. I can't show you the last one, but you've had enough to look. And let's just kind of get your response to the ones that you saw and which ones you liked, and which ones, if you read it in the Wall Street Journal, you'd believe, and which ones you'd say, that one is crazy. Sir.
That John Paul Jones bus is famous. They sent an expedition with a Union general to find his body in Paris. His doctor was the Queen's doctor. He was revered by the royal family. They buried him in a royal graveyard. They found him 15 to 20 feet below the earth. It was quite an expedition. They used miners to find him. And that bust was used to identify him.
And the skull was the exact same size, right?
And the hair. And they, just to end the story, Teddy Roosevelt, the chapel was built for him. The Naval Academy Chapel was built over that beautiful crepe you described.
Yeah.
It was